Okay, hello everyone. We are here to sync on the deployment plan for the updated registry for GitLab.com in production. And looking at the agenda, I see that Amy left a couple of questions. So maybe we can start with that. One of them is asking if the registry will be the same version or with different configurations or a different version. The answer is that it will be the exact same version. Actually, the version running right now in production for GitLab.com and also for self-managed instances that are up to date do have all of the database metadata functionality built in, but it's all disabled by default. So for the side-by-side deployment, it will be the exact same version. The only thing that changes is the configuration file used by each one of the registries. And then Amy also asks if the issue that we created several months ago in the delivery issue tracker is still accurate or need to be reviewed. This issue was mostly to look up for tips and ideas on how to approach the database migrations and the deployment process. So I think it is fine to close it now because we already defined how database migrations will be managed in charts, and we have other issues to discuss the production deployments. So I will update the issue and then close it. And then, Skarbek, you have the next question on the agenda.
Sure. So I'm just curious as to what the failure scenario is going to be like, since we're going to have two registries in operation, and since they're going to be talking to each other to some extent, I want to make sure that when one fails, we have some method of maybe not blocking traffic. I don't want to have a situation, if possible, like I don't know what the failure scenario looks like today, but say the new registry fails, but the old one is still in operation. What happens? What will the user experience? What will our API calls do, etc.?
So the basic idea behind having the two registries is that the current one will continue to be the main one and the single entry point, and it will serve requests for all repositories that exist until the date of deploying this side-by-side registry to production. So requests for repositories that exist will be served by the current registry. They won't go to the new one. But let's say that a user wants to push an image to repositories that didn't exist yet. That request will be routed to the new registry through the current one. So if the new registry is down for some reason, the affected customers are those that are trying to push images for new repositories into the registry. Those that want to push or pull images for existing repositories will not be affected. So those trying to push new images will see a service unavailable response. And getting back to them, something that we can do is that we can try to proxy, and if it fails with a service unavailable response, we can serve the requests on the current registry. That's something that we can consider to avoid any kind of service availability issues. But right now, if it fails to proxy, the user will get a service unavailable response.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the idea of serving, like falling back for new registries that should be served by registry 2. I'm not a big fan of falling back to registry 1 because I don't think we have a way to reconcile tags, which are changing over time with that, as well as since most of the registry traffic is write traffic. It seems like we're going to give ourselves a this data divergence headache for not a lot of gain, since most people are reading, and we wouldn't get those reads back even if we fell back to registry 1 in this case.
That makes sense. Thank you. I don't think I have anything else for that particular question. So I will move on to the next one. Is there any need for us to consider having a Canary deployment specific to the new registry? Currently, we already have a Canary deployment for production as is, where I think, Jarv, you could correct me, but I think we serve 5% of the traffic to the container registry right now. What, or do we need to consider a Canary for this new registry configuration? I'm leaning towards no, based on the fact that this is specifically for a migration purpose and not necessarily serving traffic, but clarification is always useful.
Yeah, I think that was one of the options that you mentioned in the issue, right? I think that's a possibility. Something that Sharp mentioned is that we could use just one of the zones for the new registry. I think from a functional perspective, I think that could be useful, because as we start moving more and more repositories from the existing registry to the new one, we will see the traffic on the new one increase, and the traffic served by the existing one will continue the same because everything flows through it, but the traffic that it actually serves, the content will decrease, right? So we could perhaps adapt, and when there is a significant portion of the traffic being served by the new registry, we could, for example, have one more zone for it. But then it would leave the existing one with just one zone, which might not be ideal, given that all traffic will continue to flow through that cluster, even if not served.
To be clear, I'm not talking about the zonal configuration. I'm just talking about the fact that we've got two stages. You know, we've got the main stage and the Canary stage. The goal for Canary being that it receives the newer version of the registry for some period of time prior than the main stage does.
Okay. That could be tricky, because we would have to have both registry there as well, right? So we would have two of them in Canary and then two of them in production.
Precisely.
And not the new one in Canary and the old one in production.
Yeah.
Is it okay to share traffic across those two environments?
Yeah, I think this could be problematic, right? Because let's say we have registry. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how this. So the way it would work is that we would have registry 2 we'd have registry 2 deployed in the Canary namespace, so that 5% of traffic going to registry.gitlab.com gets routed to Canary, which would then be proxied to the registry 2 installed in Canary. Not all requests, though. Yeah, no, I guess that would be fine. I guess what we're thinking of is we're thinking about doing this just to improve safety. Let's say we have a new version of the application that has some new functionality for registry 2, with the configuration options enabled. We would deploy that to Canary first, watch metrics, and kind of see how it's behaving before we graduate that change over to the zonal clusters. So I guess maybe this is more of an infrastructure question than an application question, because this is really just about improving the safety of deployments. I don't know how risky it is. Like, is there a I guess the question for you is there a possibility that there is a bug that's specific to registry 2 that we're not going to see with the normal registry? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it's possible because it has all the functionality for the metadata database. Although outside the API is exactly the same, it behaves in the same way, but internally things work differently. So that's possible.
Okay, so it sounds like this is a good thing to do if we can.
Yeah, another odd thing is that we won't be able to do a gradual increment by percentage. So when we proxy requests from the new registry to the old one, we can't do it on a percentage basis because, for example, image uploads are concurrent. So if you are pushing an image, there are multiple requests writing different blobs to the registry. If we did the percentage-based routing, we would probably end up with one blob being sent to the new registry and the other one sent to the old registry, and that would be a major problem. So the way that we thought about it is that we are going to do, and moving forward with this plan, we intend to do it based on the URI of the request, because the URI has the path to the repository. So we can do it using the path of the repository. For example, we can start by routing requests for repositories that start with an A, for example, and then increase and do A and B and C, and in that way we can increase the traffic gradually.
I see. Okay, so if that helps with the gradual phased rollout, then I think what we'll probably do is want to do like GitLab org, right? As maybe GitLab org would be one of the first things we try for internal, or maybe even more restricted than that. But I assume that would only be for the initial rollout, right? Like you would start with that, and then very soon after that, you would use registry 2 for all new projects. And then, okay.
Yeah, we'll start small with, as you said, with our own repositories and just one or two of them, and we will have to wait like a month, for example, to make sure everything is stable. And then we can, for example, start moving to other repositories and start accepting new repositories outside of the GitLab or group. So customer repositories would start being created there as well. And we would increase the amount of them gradually to make sure that no major bugs went unnoticed, because if something goes really wrong and we don't have that much data, what we need to do is sync the new bucket into the old one, because although in the new registry we are going to write the metadata to the database, we also have a feature flag which will enable us to continue to write that metadata to the bucket as well in parallel. The new registry won't use it, but if we need to sync data back, that means that we can just sync the data in the bucket into the old one and have the old registry serve all requests for repositories that were created in the new registry. And of course, it's easier to do that if we don't have that much data to move around.
Cool. Scarbecker, is that all you have for 5?
Yes.
Okay, on to 6. Question here is about database metrics, since we're going to be interacting with the database, whether we're going to have something in Prometheus we can use, logs. Specifically, we're always interested in seeing DB durations for, for any interaction you guys have with the database. We get this out of Rails, and it'd be nice to see this with the registry as well.
Yeah, we have a specific namespace for statement durations. So every single query that we execute against the database will have a metric with the duration of that SQL statement.
Super. Okay. Number 7, question about bandwidth cost. Just wondering if there are any changes in the way that we use bandwidth with the new registry.
It should be the same. Okay. So right now, if we have the two side by side and there is a request to download a blob that exists in an old repository, the old registry will proxy that to the old bucket in GCS. if it is a request for a blob that exists in the new registry will proxy the user to the blob on the new bucket. So it works in the same way. The only difference is that users will be redirected either to the old bucket or to the new one. But it should be transparent unless they are blocking requests by bucket name, which I don't think they're doing.
Sounds good. Number 8, I think the way we have things configured now will work the best. So the way deployments will work, if we put registry 2 in the regional cluster, let me just to give you an idea of what this looks like. So what we have is the regional cluster, which is GKE US East 1, and then we have these zonal clusters. And the registry currently runs in each of these zonal clusters. What we're proposing that we'll do is we'll run registry 2 in the regional cluster. So it'd run in GKE US East 1. The order of deployments is the regional cluster and then the zonal clusters. So my question here is, do we need to be concerned about, and we often will like deploy to the regional cluster, or we may do them all simultaneously, but it really depends. Like, I don't think we can really be guaranteed about the order of things. And that sounds like it could be a problem, right? I think the worst case scenario would be like, we deploy to the zonal clusters, which has registry, the current registry, and it's configured to point to registry 2, which doesn't yet exist, right? That would be a problem. What about though, once we're bootstrapped, once we have registry 2 running, and is there going to be any compatibility issues on this interface that we need to be worried about, or will you guys be mindful of that?
To be honest, I don't see an issue with that. So in the first deployment, of course, we will have to deploy the registry with the database first, and only then you can toggle the database feature flag or the proxy feature flag in the old registry, so that it starts proxying requests for new repositories. But after that, as long as at least one pod of each one of them stays up during the deployments, there shouldn't be a problem.
Yep. And by feature flag, you mean like how is it going to work? It's not, because we don't have feature flags for registries. It's just like an environment variable that will turn it on. Yeah,
it can be either an environment variable or a configuration in the file.
Okay, that sounds good.
It works the same way. Okay.
Okay, Henry, you have the next one.
Yeah, please tell me if my internet connection is breaking up, because I have some issues right now. So the current state in pre for registry right now is that we prepared a database for it. And I also set up a console node so that we could give access to developers to the database as soon as we add them in the right groups. And the question would be which developers should have access to the database there. So if I get a list, I could set this up. And right now we have the configuration prepared to switch the current registry over to use a database. But today I just tried to test registry in pre, and I saw some issues there because I can push images, but I don't get an image list, for instance, back. So maybe we should first make sure if registry in pre is working at all before we switch it over to using a database, right? And so the question is, how can we get on with that? And also, when should we do the switch? Because I think just talking to an empty database will just break registry, right?
Yeah. So about the registry not working, I saw that you posted an update on the issue where you mentioned there is an ongoing change in the Kubernetes workflow project that might be related.
Might be related, but I'm not sure if that is the issue, because I think the errors that we see because of that issue are more related to geo and event notifications, and that I can't get a list of the text of the images that I pushed. I don't even get logs for that. That seems to be maybe a different problem. So if one of your team maybe could also have a look for what's going on there, because I didn't figure out what's not working there today at least.
I can have a look at it. I think what that configuration for the notifications are. So probably it's failing to ping the GitLab Rails API for some reason, but we can turn that off for pre-production. But I'll have a look at it. And then about the database, I think to start with, just myself and Ailey having access to the database instance would be good. And
Okay.
and yeah, it's not useful if it is empty. I raised, I don't know if you saw it already, but inside the preprod epic, there is an issue. Let me share my screen actually. Okay, so inside, get back to it. So in the preprod epic, there is an issue to import the data from the existing container registry into the one in pre-production. So this has all the required steps to do the first deployment. Unlike with production, the pre-production registry is tiny. It's like 1 gigabyte, I think, something like that. So we can just import the data in a one-off operation with the registry CLI. So the only thing that we need to do is either put the registry in read-only mode, remove it from the load balancer, and then run the import command to move the data from the current bucket to the new one, and also inside the metadata database. And then we can configure it to use the metadata database and to use the new buckets. So before this, we will have also to create a new bucket for the registry. I don't know if this is something that delivery would do.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so that's the step we need to create the bucket first. And once we have the bucket, we need to do the import. Configure the registry to use the database and the new buckets, and then we can turn it on.
Okay, so that's possible to do with the current existing registry, right? So it's just all done with that one, if I get it right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
So from my understanding, preprod is going to be a migration that happens offline, whereas for like staging, for staging and production, we're going to do like an online migration. We're going to accept traffic while the migration happens in the background, correct?
Mm-hmm. We can also, if it takes time to do the side-by-side deployment, we can also do the same one-off migration, offline migration in staging if we want to. But this is only meant for us to be able to start testing and creating the dashboards with all of the metrics based on the pre-production deployment. So we don't need the side-by-side deployment to do that. We just need the new registry to be updated and to have the new bucket and the database in place and fields.
Yeah. I think it'd be wise to leverage staging as a good test bed for vetting the online migration procedures. I don't see a reason that I think we should have a secondary registry deployment and just make that as similar to production as possible, just to have a test case for that. I think what you're doing in pre-prod would probably be a good thing to send over to distribution. That way, when customers need to do this for themselves, they've got kind of these same steps outlined for themselves.
Yeah, I agree. We should definitely do that. And probably one of the problems is that both pre-production and staging don't have almost any traffic on the registry. So that's a concern, which means we won't be able to see much more than we are already able to simulate locally with just us doing some manual tests. So I was wondering if we could somehow fork some of the traffic that goes, for example, to the dev registry into the staging one, for example, during that phase. I know we have a lot of pipelines building against the dev registry. So perhaps we could have a period of time where we would switch those to use the staging one.
We could probably try to figure something out, maybe. I think we'll have a few options, whether it be traffic or maybe we could set up a synthetic like CI project that just does random stuff against a registry at some point. If we don't already, we should probably have an issue to address that concern.
Okay. Any other concerns or questions?
I just have a clarification question and I'm sure this is probably already documented in the issue, but for the second registry that's being brought online, it's only taking traffic for new tags. It's not project specific, correct?
It's project, yeah.
It is project, okay.
Yeah, so if you yeah, repository project, yeah. So if you push a new tag to a repository that existed before that registry was deployed, that would go to the existing registry. But if you push to a new project or a new sub repository under an existing one, that would go to the new.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think the other big thing that we need to do is figure out what can go wrong and how to act on that. So I think we should probably also use staging to test those failure scenarios. And I'm thinking in stuff like just the database failing, because even this is a new component, there are no runbooks or any instructions on how to troubleshoot, to fix anything, to recover anything. So I think we'll have to figure that out.
It would be good to test all of that. That way our on-call engineers know how to handle various failure scenarios.
Okay, I'll create an issue for that under the staging epic. That's probably better to do in staging than preprod, because there are no custom database cluster in preprod.
Precisely, yeah. I don't believe I've got any more questions.
Okay, so I'll open up a few issues. Then we can get the registry operated in preprod. And then we will continue discussing whatever is needed to do the side-by-side deployment in staging. But before we transition, we want to transition from preprod to staging. That may be too early to do that. Do you have any kind of estimates on how long it would take us to get the side-by-side deployment working once we are ready? In staging, of course.
I don't personally have an estimate, but this is relatively decent priority for our team. So I think once we get pre-prod going, staging will be our next target. So as soon as we get pre-prod running and working as desired, we'll probably just make sure that we've got any closed loops, metrics and testing procedures nailed down and issues written up. I think we should be able to start that work pretty much immediately after that.
Yeah.
You also need to keep in mind that the data stores team needs to bring up the database cluster first. So this also needs to be taken into account. They are also heavy loaded at the moment. So we need to see how much time they have for that, and we need to coordinate with them maybe.
Okay. yeah, one of our biggest focus in preprod will be really metrics, because we can do that work and then it will just be reused for staging and production. So it's worth to spend time in pre-production doing that. So it will take us some time, and that time should hopefully be enough to get the staging cluster up and running.
Sounds good. Sounds like there's a lot of moving parts that are happening in parallel, so hopefully we could all converge at near the same time, perhaps.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so I'll stop the recording.